Coach, take me back to that week in March of 2020. It was, it started off pretty normal,
Mhm.
and ended very not normal.
Yeah.
What do you remember about that week and the first couple days there of what became the COVID shutdown?
So, yeah, I remember we played Friday, and it was Friday the 13th, was the day that, our senior night game was on, and I remember, you start like that Monday and Tuesday, you got chatter, Facebook postings of like what Wake County is going to do, and you start seeing some other states start like closing, and I think Ohio was there, a lot of the Northeast state. I'm from Massachusetts, so I was seeing a lot of the Northeast states like closing and like shutting down schools. And I want to say it was like Wednesday or Thursday of that week, Wake County announced that like they were going to pause athletics. So, like Friday at midnight was, no game was going to happen after Friday at midnight. Which, like, thinking back now, 6 years later, is just seems kind of a very funny thing to think about. Like, retrospective, it's just like, all right, Friday at midnight, we're going to be, we're not good, but beforehand, we're perfectly fine. Um, and so, like, I remember having conversations with our colleagues here, being like, I don't know if this is gonna work, or this is not gonna sound good, or this is, what's gonna happen here. And then it started becoming, probably for Friday, started becoming a very real thing of just like, oh, like we might not be back next week. And so that was trying to coach around that as like a young coach. I mean, I was 28 at the time, no kids, a lot less white in the beard. Trying to like navigate that as like, I mean, I was a third year head coach at that point. Was kind of tough because like I didn't have answers. And no one I knew had answers. Like there was like, hey, I'm gonna go talk to this person and get an answer. Like we just didn't have an answer. And a lot of people were just trying to do the best that they could. Um, and so it was kind of it's the senior night, because I know we talked about like, doing senior night and having Apex come through. That really happened just really organically. I had a great group of junior moms at the time, or yeah, junior moms at the time, Michelle Umstead and Amy Mullins and Stephanie Bourne, who, all three of them I still talk to this day. Stephanie's daughter lives like down the street from me in Fuquay. And I had a conversation with them because I was like, hey, I think we should do a senior night. Like, I think this would be a great thing to do a senior night. Let's knock this out. Who knows? It's because I think Wake County said like 2 weeks was going to be the pause. And I was like, let's just do the senior night. Let's knock it out. I was like, can you guys help with that? And they said, absolutely. We're going to do this. We're going to get going. And I want to say that conversation was probably like Wednesday or Thursday that week. And then later that day, one of those three women, I can't remember which one exactly, calls me and says, hey, would you be okay if we invite Apex to do a senior night as also? Because at the time, those like we still were very much commingled. So like it's less commingling now between the elementary and middle schools because there's so many more elementary schools in this area. Well, there's a couple more elementary schools in this area, and you didn't change as much. But a lot of my guys on the team went to middle school with the guys at Apex. Like they went to Apex Middle, or they went to Lufkin, or they went to Salem, because I don't even think Apex Friendship Middle was open yet. And so those kids grew up together. And I said, yeah, no, that's absolutely, I think that's a great idea. And I want to say, I think it was like 2-ish, 3 hours later, Coach Hayden from Apex calls me, and he asked me the same question of like, hey, I have a parent asking if we can do a senior night. And I said, hey, one of my parents is already talking to one of your parents. I think they have this handled. And he's, oh, great, awesome, this is great. And so it was really the parents of both the Apex and my parents that got the lacrosse sticks and the flowers and organized everything and set everything up. And now retrospective of having kids of my own now, I have two now. Back then I had none. Like I'm really glad that we did that. Like just like those, I got a guy on staff right now who was in that senior class, Austin Tingen, and like that photo popped up the other day on his mom's Facebook memories of me in the photo with his family of doing the senior night. And I just now, as a parent, I'm just like, I'm really glad that like those parents got that picture, that memory, that moment. Because I know a lot of teams didn't do it, or like didn't have the opportunity to do it just because of planning or logistics, or they didn't have a game scheduled.
Yeah, there are a lot of people who had no senior night recognition at all. Well, why did you feel it was important to do that at the time? Because, yeah, one of the things that I've struggled with this is, as we go back and talk about the different things that happened, like putting myself mentally in March of 2020 and not knowing what I know now about how all of that
Mhm,
transpired. Everybody thought, I think the NCHSAA suspension was 3 weeks, and
mhm,
everybody was kind of like, "Oh, maybe we'll be back in 3 weeks. Maybe it'll be 4 weeks." But there wasn't a lot of like, it's all over right at first.
mhm.
Well, why was the senior night important for you to make happen?
I think it was something that, you didn't know what was gonna happen. And like you said, it was, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and you just didn't know what was gonna happen. And so it was something that could be put together. We had time to put it together. And then, if we got back to playing, cool. Like, then, like, they had their senior night, and if we wanted to do another senior night and do something different, we could do that. Like, it was really just like there was no negatives to do it. And if there's no negatives to do it, and people like, especially those senior moms, like, if my in a lot of my eyes is like, if it doesn't affect me and a senior mom wants to do it because they want that memory or they want that picture, it's a no-brainer. Especially for that group of seniors, because that was, I mean, they were there at Friendship from the beginning, and so a lot of those parents, were, some of them were the team moms at the time, and just, it was easy for us to do and to put together. And again, go back to those three moms in particular, and I'm sure I'm probably forgetting a couple of other ones that play a key factor in that time period. Um, but they just were able to make it happen. And I'm glad that we were able to make that happen for Apex too. I mean, especially, so I don't know if you like, so Gene Vigu, so he was the assistant coach at Apex. Well, that was his son's senior night. So that's Zach, who went to Richmond and had a really great career at Richmond. And then I think he just got signed um, to one of the PLL teams only for Apex in Richmond. And Gene's a great guy. And I remember talking to whoever your photographer, high school team's photographer there at the time, because Gene used to always warm up Zach. And I said, hey, like, you should go get a photo of that, because that's Gene's last time warming up his son. Like, this could be his last time warming up the sun. And so I think Gene's got that photo somewhere in his house. He told me one time of just of that moment. And it's just really easy to do. And I was very happy that high school T came and like took really good photos of that and kind of memorized that, just because it was, that night. And then, let's call it like 2 years after, was kind of just like a weird time in athletics a little bit. Now we're kind of back to normal. We're back to normal, and like
Yeah.
we're just normal. But that night and then 2 years later was still kind of weird for athletics.
What was the hardest part as a coach, like leading a team through that? Because especially in the spring, there was a lot of, well, we might be back, we might not. There's a date set. We're gonna, see what the governor says on this date, and then it gets pushed back 2 more weeks. What was that like?
So it was super. I distinctly remember this from Friday. So at halftime of that game, Wake County makes an announcement that we're going to school Monday. So like they make this Facebook post, and like of course, like you got people on the sideline with cell phones, and non-athletes with cell phones, and it goes through the crowd, and I just remember trying to navigate, like the guys were disappointed that they had to go to school on Monday. And I was like, hey, we have to focus. It was actually, it ended up being like, I think we lost 8-5, but it was a really close game that we had. And at that time, like, we were getting our butts kicked by Apex every year, so like that was a very competitive game for us to be in at the time. And then we find out, and then that weekend is when Wake County shuts down. I think it was like Sunday when they make a announcement that like they're going to close down, and shortly the governor closed down the state. It's just you didn't. I don't think any coach knew how to navigate that. I know a lot of guys like Coach Lohman, who's our basketball coach here. Like, I think he had weekly Zoom meetings and Google Meet meetings. I know Coach Sanders, our football coach here, has met with the guys several times. Met with the football team and all stuff. It was you met with the guys, but then it was, what are we going to talk about? Like, and so it was really trying to navigate how to, like, what is this season going to be? Like, is this even a season? Especially when we got into April and it started becoming a little bit more clear that like we're not coming back. It was kind of just, all right, like, is there any way that we can just like wrap up their senior year? like make it so we did a senior night, but like, is there ways? And I think Mr. White did a great job of just like, all right, let's try to make the senior class like have an actual like senior year of like just like a memory or a graduation, or like I remember doing the drive-through graduations where they took a photo from their car, like those kind of things, because it definitely shifted towards that of just like, I don't think we're playing lacrosse anymore, but like we still want them to have some sort of like a senior year or senior year memories.
That senior night memory that they had, what do you remember about their reactions to that?
I think it's one of those, it's like as a player, you're probably not in, I mean, no 18-year-old kid is gonna be like feel about that at that moment of like, oh, this is special. Like definitely like we always talk like senior nights for the moms and dads. Like, and I think that's like I have perspective. So my daughter's 5. And she just started playing sports. Like she started playing lacrosse and gymnastics and all this stuff. And so like I think you always think about your kids, like especially if you're a coach, you always think about your kids playing sports. And then it's like, all of a sudden, like, senior night for her in 2038, uh, which seems really far away. It's just like you have all these like dreams or aspirations for your kids, and it's just like that's like a culmination of that moment of just like them having their senior night, having the picture. And so I know a lot of the parents were super appreciated. And I think a lot of the kids now looking back on it, like I talked to Coach Tingen, who was a senior on that senior night, and he's like, yeah, I mean, it was one of those things. I took a photo, but like now when I look back on that photo, that's, in my house, like, in my parents' house, like I kind of like, it brings up memories. It brings up like that day and that week, and just like, it jogs those memories and the funny times that we had in that shortened season.
Including Apex, people who may not be in the area, Apex and
Mhm.
Apex Friendship has become a great high school rivalry.
Yeah.
And
And
the
a
whole
lot of like interconnection weaves there. And
it,
I got a full circle one if you want this. You talk about like a rivalry. So Alex Baker, okay, who was a really good defenseman for Apex and a tight end for Apex back in the day. Okay. So I can't remember when he graduated from Apex High School, but he graduated my first or second year coaching here. Okay. So Alex Baker and he's the coach, he's one of the assistant coaches right now for Apex. His dad, Chris Baker, was was my colleague. He was a social studies teacher. I shared a wall with him. And he just recently retired from Friendship. So like Alex worked at is one of the lacrosse coaches at Apex High School. His dad was a coach or a teacher for us at Apex Friendship High School. His dad is the voice for Friendship because he does all the pre-recording announcements. So all the like the state announcements, he is the voice. So and when we do like please rise to the national anthem, that is Mr. Baker's voice. So that connection, Mr. Baker's daughter-in-law is my daughter's kindergarten teacher next door, because my daughter is at Apex Friendship Elementary. So it is very much like a rivalry in the sense of just like we like beating them, they like beating us, but it's very much also a very big community of like everyone's connected, and it's a great place to work, and it's a great place to like raise your kid and have your kids go to school. It's I feel like it's less intermingled player wise now, but like as you get older, it's a lot more connections, and it's a great rivalry. It's in all sports too. Like it's not just like football or lacrosse or basketball, but it's all sports that you'll get a ton of fans to come out. I mean, probably the biggest game that we had this year fan wise was the Apex home game.
yeah. The Did that make it weird though on senior night? Like you're recognizing your kids and Apex kids?
I wouldn't say it wasn't like weird. So like it was, I mean, it all happened pregame, and it wasn't weird. And I think it's the perspective, even at that time, realized that it was like this was going to be different. Like I I honestly I didn't think we would be back. Like, I as just like the gov teacher and me, and just seeing how things were happening in Ellis Place, like it was like, I don't there's zero shot that we're gonna be back. This 2 weeks, like now thinking about that 6 years later, 2 weeks just sounds funny. Um, but like it wasn't weird, like in the sense of just like, oh, this is awkward, because it's just like, I mean, the parents did it all, the team moms put it all together, and they did such a great job putting it all together. And I think it was, the whole thing took 20 minutes. But that 20 minutes meant a lot for, a lot of different people. to have that memory and have that picture.
Does it also kind of, I don't know if paint the picture is the right word, but does it kind of demonstrate what high school sports are about beyond just the game itself?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's where everyone enjoys, everyone enjoys playing high school sports. Everyone enjoys winning, but at the end of the day, like, it's, the kids that you grew up with, even like lacrosse is a great example of this. Like, you don't have a school-based youth lacrosse, so like if you play for a travel team, that travel team's made up of Apex kids and Middle Creek kids and Holly Springs kids. And so, a lot of, even my seniors right now that play for like a 91 or a Red Devil or a True, like they've been playing for these teams since they were in third grade or in fourth grade with teams, and going to weekends, to Virginia and Delaware and New York together. And these parents have grew up knowing each other and hanging out on the weekends on these different, in different parts of the country. So it just really brings, like, the high school board sports, like, brings that community aspect. So like when something happens, I know, I think it was the year after COVID or around that same time. I can't remember the timelines of this, but like we had our assistant principal's daughter develop cancer, and Apex showed up with stickers on the back of their helmet, for her, which was like we were wearing stickers, and like they just heard about it and then just they got stickers made. And that kind of stuff has happened a lot. Like we're wearing stickers right now because Coach Sopko over at Green Level, one of his cousins has childhood cancer. So we got the sticker that the Green Level guys are wearing, and we just put on the back of our helmet because I've known Kyle for since he got to Green Level, and he's a great guy and a great coach. And it's that community aspect that, like, I know I'm going to be here until my kids graduate, which will be a while, and I know he's got the similar mindset over at Green Level. So we're just trying to make one big community.
As that season became summer and then eventually fall, and we're still not back in school, still not back playing sports, what was it like as a coach trying to keep a program like together?
So it was tough. So that to be honest, that next season was the toughest season. So that next season, when we played lacrosse and football in the same season, and I'm the offensive line coach for the football team. So I and the state made a rule where you could not play football and lacrosse within 24 hours. And the way they interpreted that rule was basically like there had to be like almost like a full day. So like a kid, if we had a kid play a Friday night football game, his last lacrosse game he could play would be like Wednesday. And so if he had a game scheduled for Thursday, he couldn't play in the football game Friday. So at the time, my starting goalie was also my starting left guard. And we had several crossover kids, and it kind of forced some kids to pick one sport, because we had about, I want to say, about 3 to 4 weeks of like true crossover of like football and lacrosse were going on at the exact same time. I was never home. And guys, wearing football pads and then putting on lacrosse stuff. And like, I remember, trying to just, we practiced at 6 o'clock in the morning at the nature park, every day. To get field space. I mean, that's what it was. I mean, because Pleasant Park, I don't know if you're familiar with Pleasant Park, the big one in Apex yet. So the turf field's on this side, where you could go to Holly Springs, all right, which we figured Holly Springs would be there with like Middle Creek, and Middle Creek had their turf fields up there. And there was something like I didn't want to practice lacrosse right next to Middle Creek High School. And so it was like for us in Apex and like Green Level and Apex and all this, it was the nature park and Hunter Street. And so I saw the writing on the wall that we would all have to share these fields. So I actually got with Mr. White and then Jock Gilbert, the mayor of Apex, and he kind of helped with this. Because I initially got told no by the town. You can't practice at 6 o'clock in the morning at the turf field. And then I was like, listen, these kids need some like normalcy. They need some like structure. Because if you talk to some of these coaches, like they practiced all over the place. Like I think Helota told me one time Middle Creek practiced like in North Raleigh one time, because that was like where they could get a field. Like these guys, and it was all these different times. And yeah, I would and I tried to do both. So I would Monday I would have lacrosse practice in the morning and then have football practice in the afternoon. And then we would have lacrosse practice in the morning or games. And then, then I would get up for a lacrosse game and then next morning have lacrosse practice and then have football practice and go to a football game. It was chaos. I joke around with my wife that basically Wednesday night, I did not see my daughter like in person at home until Saturday morning because she was asleep when I was ping ponging back and forth between JV football, varsity football, and lacrosse. But it was hard, and we didn't have a JV program that year because a lot of people were worried about coming out for sports. We lost a couple. I had a couple of kids who just chose to play football instead of lacrosse. We had some kids, like our face-off kid, short stick defense midi, was a linebacker football team. He chose just to play lacrosse. Like a lot, I think all the programs got hit by that, of just like the COVID year of just like not having guys, because parents were worried and they had a right to be worried. You had all these, stuff that was going on. And so it took about a year or so for us to kind of like rebuild that program, because when we didn't have a JV program that one year, I had about 5 kids stay and practice in the morning, all this stuff. But like a lot of kids were just like, well, no, if I'm not going to play in a game, I'm not going to show up to 6 a.m. practices. And I couldn't fault them for that.
Yeah, I would understand that one. Was it that season though, after COVID, I guess that was the 21, like
Yeah.
January, February 21, of lacrosse. Was that more of just like, let's just do something and not worry as much about I mean, I know you want to win, but it's not really as much about the result as it is of let's just get out there.
Yeah, it was great to play lacrosse games. It was great. It was I mean, yeah, I mean, it was great to go out and do something. Looking back on it, I wish there was some stuff that we were able to do differently. Like, I mean, we only played like 10 games that year. Because you only could play, you had to play your conference. Scheduling out a conference was really tough. You could only play counties that touched your county. I don't know if you remember that rule. And so it was like in lacrosse, that's hard. Like, I mean, my schedule this year, I played Weddington and Charlotte. I played Myers Park. I played Croatan. I played Laney. I played Topsail. We travel all over the place. And so that year of just like, nope, all your Wake County schools can only play the Wake County schools. It got difficult to schedule games to match up and to find, honestly, the field space. And I would say our administration did a lot of really good things. So we utilized the turf field really well. So like, I think I only played 1 game at Friendship Stadium. Most of my games were at the turf field just because you had to navigate football and soccer and girls lacrosse and boys lacrosse all in one season. And so we did a lot of things that we've kept from COVID and that year after COVID, of how we did things, that we had to kind of force to do it because of the situation we were in. So like going forward, it's been benefit of just like having turf field access and be able to switch it. You see a lot of teams now going to the turf field to play a game. Pre-COVID, that wasn't a thing. That was not a thing that any athletic director or athletic trainer would be interested in doing. But now it's like you have the means to do it, and it can be done. So a lot of programs have taken advantage of that.
When you look back at that period, what do you want people, or what would you want people now who maybe weren't living through that period, to understand about COVID and what high school sports had to go through as a result of it?
Yeah, it was difficult. It was difficult because it was rules. We had a lot of rules, and a lot of people were trying to make rules that they felt were going to be beneficial. And you just didn't know if they were going to be beneficial at the time, if these were rules that were going to work or rules that weren't going to work. Honestly, the people that you were your bosses, like the athletic director or principal, they weren't the ones making the rules. They're not even their bosses were making the rules. People at the state and in the association and the general assembly, they're the ones making the rules, and they were doing it to try to help people. And so it was difficult. And I think for that 2 years, that senior and junior class, the senior class of code and that next class, kind of got gypped out of like kind of a high school experience. Because at least that senior class that was COVID, like they had the fall, they had the winter, they had all this stuff. That next year was just so weird of like coming into school, coming out of school. We were teaching virtually. At one point I was teaching virtually from my in-laws basement in Wisconsin. During Christmas break, I was teaching in the basement just like this. And it was just like it was difficult. And it's so weird to think about now that like we're gonna another 4 years and most of our kids that are gonna be in high school just have zero concept of it. Like my daughter will not have a concept of COVID. She was born during COVID, but like she doesn't really remember like wearing masks or doing all that kind of stuff because she was still little when all that was going on. So that's gonna make me feel really old when like I'm gonna have to explain to her what COVID was like. Like you're doing this just because, and I was like, it was difficult. You just didn't know. You didn't know what's coming out with high school sports and like what was gonna make it or what change like what's those long-term changes that are gonna happen with high school sports. Like we just it was so much of like not knowing. And I think every coach struggles with not being able to control stuff. And like you had no control. You're just at the whim of whatever decision was made that day.
It is hard to believe it's been over 5 years now, 6 years.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
'Cause it feels like it was it's
It feels like
yesterday.
it, and then I look at my, my soon to be 6-year-old gonna come walk over from kindergarten. I'm like, "Oh, you weren't alive when we shut down. Like, you were born that summer." Yeah, no, it's just it's weird. I was thinking it was still 3 years ago, and I was like, "No," like, a lot of those guys who were my seniors that year, like, a couple of them are married, a couple of them have kids, a couple of them are got engaged, they've graduated from college, they have jobs. Like, one's on my staff right
Mhm.
now. Like he got his master's degree in accounting and he's like a real adult. And like I was like, I was your age when I was like a little bit older than you when like I was coaching you. And now like you're a real adult talking to me about adult things. Like it feels like it was just yesterday, but it was a little bit ago.
One last question for you. I know you talked about the turf field, like how that became a positive thing that came out of COVID. Are there other lasting impacts that you think still exist today, positive or negative, that have maybe would not have been the case if we had not had the pandemic?
I would say I think the collaboration amongst like coaching of just the sharing athletes and like working through that how to share athletes. It's we've had a couple of situations of, just in the case of this of like, I'm really good friends with our football coach, and he's like always been super supportive of like football players playing lacrosse. And so I've had one kid in particular that went from lacrosse to play football, and he was pretty good at it. But I think during COVID, because there was so much like overlapping, you had to figure out and you were kind of forced to like, hey, I need this person at practice today. Okay, you can have this person at practice today. And then like the guys, the coaches who are still in it have kind of just like that's just used to it. Like, hey, can I have this person at practice today? Or hey, can this person go to this meeting or can they be in this? And we're not trying to take away from your sport. But like we kind of need them for this one thing. And you see this a lot with like track and working with other sports or just the willingness of a football coach or letting their kids do spring sports like lacrosse instead of maybe being in like the track or the weightlifting classes. I think it's that forced collaboration that has benefited a lot of our student athletes because it gives them the opportunity to go play other sports, which like is I think is the goal. Like I want my kids to play other sports, get used to get to see different things and different coaching styles and use different muscles. And so I think COVID definitely helped a little bit of that.